We are at SHOT Show 2025 at the Magpul booth with Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, George. How's it going?
It's going great. And we are doing a very fun thing today. We're talking about the Breslau, giving you some more details, and we're going to answer all of your questions from the video we put out yesterday. Let's talk knives. So Chris, in the video we put out yesterday, we talked a whole lot about MIM, and people have a lot of questions. And one of the big questions they had was, tell us about the knife in specific. They're like, well, the knife, we want to see that. So tell us about the Breslau.
Yeah, so the Breslau is our first knife that's going to come out. It's our EDC variant. It kind of has these brutalist design features. But what's cool is that you're adding innovation into the blade. That's our big thing with the MIM technology. So we have variable cross sections through the bevel, so you can have a hollow grind through the body, and then it actually thickens out into the tip.
And that's impossible to do on a conventional grinder, right?
Not impossible, but you would have to add more machinery, more costs, all of those things. So with a one-stop shop like a MIM blade that's molded, you can put all of those features into a single blade. So.
Okay. And I'll tell you, on conventional knives, if you want a compound grind, even kind of like this, you're going to have it hand ground by somebody who really knows what they're doing, and that is going to take the price into the stratosphere.
Correct, yeah.
Way beyond the, what, 189 we're doing here?
Yeah, exactly. So you can just add more and more features and not increase the cost. And so that's the goal with MIM, and that's what we see. That's what we do with all these polymer injected parts. And so we're just taking the same architecture and the same design philosophy that we do with that stuff and putting it into this new material, Maven 35. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maven 35 is a really cool blade steel, by the way. We can learn a lot more about that in that video we watched yesterday. But my next question is, how'd you get the name Breslau, and what was the inspiration for the name and the knife?
Yeah, so the knife has some brutalist features to it. We kind of got pulled into a rally race in Breslau, Poland about a decade ago. What ended up happening is we put a Unimog into the race, and when we saw the knife and it ended in its final design aesthetic, we were like, it kind of looks like the Unimog. So that's what got us to the Breslau in that race. So that's where the name comes from.
Okay, and if I remember correctly, that's right around the time the first scales are finding their ways onto Hinderers and Magpul was starting to think about knives.
Yeah, we were doing these employee knives. We took some PMAG scales, put them on a knife blade, and then handed those out to employees. It was taken so well that we started kind of exploring the rigor, and that's when the rigor ideation came, and then we finally got to the MIM technology, and now we're here at the Breslau today. So
right around the time you were running a Unimog in Breslau, Magpul was cooking knives in the brain. And now we're here a decade later with the Breslau. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people do have a lot of questions about some of the MIM tech. And are you ready for them? They're hard.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're ready.
All right, so the first one is about metal injection molding and gun parts. Apparently, you guys in the comments can keep me honest on this one. Metal injection molding isn't super well trusted in guns, and people will spend money to get away from it. So why would they be afraid of it, and how have we avoided those problems here?
Yeah, I think in the knife market, MIM was tried decades ago, and the technology wasn't there, right? So we're talking about MIM and knife blades 2 decades ago. The same is true in gun parts. There are tons of gun parts that are MIM today, but the technology has grown over the last couple of decades. So you would be surprised how many MIM parts are actually, how prolific they are in gun parts today. So
yeah, and maybe there are MIM parts failing in your gun, but I can almost guarantee there are MIM parts in your gun that are not failing, and you haven't even noticed because they're just doing the job.
Yeah, and the innovation is growing every day. Our vendors, just in the last 2 years, we have learned so much through the MIM process that it's starting to look different than what we thought was possible 2-3 years ago. So.
And for all of you knife steel nerds out there, we've seen the same thing with blade steels. Like 20-30 years ago, D2 on your blade steel was the stuff. That was the best that you could get. But if you wanted better edge retention and toughness and whatever, that was the folder steel. But now we have crazier steels as we've gotten developments in powder metallurgy and other things. MIM has been going through the same journey, and we're getting to the point where we can get super steel performance out of MIM.
Yeah, guess what? 20 years ago, they were saying the same thing about plastic magazines. So here we are, and now we're the new industry standard in magazines. So
the next question we saw a few people asking is about case hardening. Some people saying that with MIM, the outside of the blade gets hard, but the inside stays soft. And when you grind to the edge in the middle of the blade, it's going to be soft and it won't hold.
Yeah, that's simply not true. So we're not case hardening anything. We are going through the standard heat treating process. So blades are sintered, heat treated, and they're coming to their final form there. So no case hardening there. So
okay, so after the HIP process, if you need a refresher on that, go check out the other video. the blade is solid, and then they heat treat it like you would any other blade.
Correct.
So it's going to be, what, 62 HRC all the way through.
Yep.
And in that catcher report, they actually took HRCs several places along the blade, and believe it or not, it was actually more consistent in hardness than the conventional billet.
It was,
So,
yeah. We are getting very, very consistent results.
And maybe that's because you don't have to grind out a bevel when the blade is hard.
Correct. Yep.
So I'm really impressed by that part. And the last question people were having was about price competitiveness. So I know that one of the benefits of MIM is these added features, and those features would be so much more expensive, but we're not quite, I mean, it's not a sub $100 knife. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's not sub $100. One, it's made in the USA. Our designers sit next to our desk in the USA. Our vendors are close by. We are controlling the entire process from start to finish. We also set our sights on making a compound that is comparable to S35VN. So I would say that comparison makes us very competitive at the $199 or $189 price point. So
yeah, and I agree. And another thing I will say is there's a lot of R&D costs in here, because that's why you see a lot of companies that can put out a billet steel that's a lot cheaper. That's because that is such a well hammered out process. But I'll bet you in 20, 30 years, we'll be seeing this sub 100.
yeah, and I think another point is if you wanted a protrusion out of the blade like our blade is, that would be cost prohibitive. You could not do it without a $500, $700 knife. So adding grit clearance pads, adding a nightmare grind or some sort of compound grind to a blade, all that stuff is increased cost, but you're getting it for essentially nothing. We're giving it to you for more or less free, right? So,
well, I think it's very impressive, and honestly, I'm not too concerned about the price. I think, like you said, I think it's a very competitive price, and I'm excited to see it. And I've been looking at the data. You guys are excited too. We've sold a ton of them, and I'm excited for this future relationship with Magpul.
yeah, thanks, George. We are too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for making an awesome knife. We'll see you all next time.